Hey guys, my name is Angelia. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. If you're returning, then welcome back. This is definitely a different type of video than what we are used to doing. Usually we do a lot of gaming and stuff like that, but sometimes real life takes over and I do want to talk about it. I have posted about this on the community tab on Twitter and stuff like that, but now that I am past it, I feel a little bit more comfortable talking about it and also giving you guys some advice if you're dealing with it, because I felt super alone. So what I'm talking about is NAFLD, which that is the abbreviation for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. There is obviously an alcoholic version and all of that fun stuff. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is first, and I'm going to talk about how I got diagnosed and then how I fixed it for myself, because again, there's not a lot of information out there, at least not a lot that will help you. There's so many conflicting things and I had trouble with it. And then like when the doctors diagnose you, they don't give you a list of, hey, this is what you can eat and stuff like that. So I want to get into all of that, and if I can help just one person not feel as alone as I did when I got diagnosed with it, then my goal will be complete. So I had NAFLD, which is the first stage of liver disease. It's not super serious, but it can be if you don't take care of it. So basically what happens is there's fat that gets built up in the liver over time. This can happen from gaining weight from eating processed foods and eating things that are just overall terrible for you. So it just builds up this fat inside of your liver. So they do a test, what's called a fibroscan. And it measures the fat content that's in your liver by sending pulses to your liver, which is actually kind of cool, by the way. I've only had 2, but it's been pretty helpful. They can see it on ultrasound. You can see it on a CT scan, all that fun stuff. FibroScan will give you an actual score and where you're sitting in terms of the liver disease. So NASH would be the second stage of liver disease, or the second stage of NAFLD. I cannot pronounce the actual term for it, but it's non-alcoholic something. I can't say the word, so if you want to look it up, it's NASH for NASH. I will also put it up on the screen so you guys can read it. I cannot pronounce it. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. So in this stage, you've already passed NAFLD, so the fat is already built up. So it's already producing like essentially scar tissue that's inside of your liver. Okay, so it's causing inflammation, it's causing some damage. So when you're in NASH, you can potentially scar the liver. So like the first stage of NAFLD, NASH can be reversible. So the third stage is unfortunately cirrhosis. That's if you've completely let it go. You've already gotten diagnosed and you're like, I'm not changing my eating habits. It delves into cirrhosis, which is non-reversible. We all know cirrhosis is not a good thing to have, so avoiding that is key. And I'm not trying to scare anyone. Lord knows I've had my share of medical anxiety recently. I just want you guys to know the 3 different stages of liver disease. It's not something to be super scared about if you're in the beginning stages, because the cool thing about your liver is it actually regenerates itself. So if there's an organ that you need something to be wrong with, you're gonna want it to be the liver, because it regenerates like a freaking lizard, basically. It's pretty cool. It was very scary at first, but learning more about it makes it way less scary. So now that we've learned a little bit about what NAFLD is and how it can progress and stuff like that, I want to talk about when I got diagnosed and the symptoms and everything that kind of led up to that moment, because not knowing what's going on in your body is a scary thing. So it was probably around May of 2022, I was feeling a lot of discomfort. I was feeling especially a lot of pain around my right rib cage. And then later on, I was feeling a lot of pelvic pain. So I wound up going to the ER. They diagnosed me with my first ever UTI, which is completely unrelated, but it fits into this story. So, you know, I go to the ER, they do a CT scan on me, all that fun stuff, and they find out, okay, she has a UTI. At this point, I would have already had NAFLD. They did not tell me about it, which I'm still a little bit frustrated by. I'm not going to lie. So the UTI progresses, is not getting any better, so I have to go to my GP. She gives me new medication. Fine, cool. But I'm still having that pain in my right rib cage. So they start pressing on me and it's kind of tender to the touch. There's certain like positions I can't sit in anymore. It got to the point where laying on my right side to go to sleep was kind of painful. So she sent me off for another CT scan. So for this CT scan, they did put the dye in me to see my organs a little bit more lit up and all that fun stuff. It's not fun. It makes you incredibly warm. I felt like I was peeing myself. It's not enjoyable. But that result came back that same day. So I got scanned on July 5th of 2022. I got the results back a few hours later because they sent it to like my patient portal, so I was able to view it, and it said severe fatty liver disease. So naturally I was in a freaking panic. I called my doctor like, no, it's nothing to be worried about. Just, take it as a sign that you need to eat better and exercise more. Just think of it as a wake-up call. So I was like, this isn't really a lot to go on because they don't tell you what to eat, what not to eat. So I had to do my own research that day. I was Googling like a crazy person. I have so many links to websites. I will probably put a list together on my Twitter page and then just link to the Twitter since YouTube has this thing about links lately. So I dragged Scott off to the store. We grabbed a bunch of stuff for me to cook so I could start eating better. And within I would say about 2 weeks, the pain on my right side was completely gone. It started to diminish after about 3 to 4 days of eating cleaner. So the diet definitely was helping, which I was relieved by. Like, even if it wasn't fixed at that point, I was just relieved to have no pain on my right side because, again, it was really, really hard for me to sleep. And it was just a nightmare. And I know the doctors will tell you, you're not supposed to have any pain with NAFLD. That means it's progressed. That means it's worse than it actually is. And I have found that to not be entirely true because I have met other people with NAFLD and they do have discomfort on their right side around the bottom inside of their rib cage. So I think it's kind of almost a myth that you can't have any discomfort. And if you do, it's like this big bad thing. It's not, because I had quite a bit of discomfort and I was still in the very first stage. But again, at that point, I was still at severe fatty liver disease. So I then had my first fibroscan of November of 2022. My GP kept running blood labs on me and all of that fun stuff. And there are 2 scores mostly that they look for in terms of elevated liver enzymes. So you're gonna look for ALT and AST. And both of mine had skyrocketed. So she sent me over to the gastroenterologist, which is a GI doctor that deals with tummy issues, and your liver is part of that. Your liver processes food through your body. It processes everything to go through your body. So she ordered a fibroscan. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. So at this point, we went from July 5th to, I think it was about mid-November when I had that fibroscan. And I had already dropped my score down. So my score at that point, I was barely a 1 on both of the scales that they judge by. I actually just grabbed my most recent fibroscan results so I can look at the scales that they judge by. So there are 2 scores. You have the hepatic steatosis, again, I can't say it, steatosis score for it's a 0 out of a 3 for the scoring. And at that point, I was about at a 1. And then the second score is hepatic fibrosis score, which is 0 out of 4, and again I was about at a 1. So already between July and November I had dropped my severe fatty liver down to mild, and that was just with diet. So for the next year or so, I mean, you guys saw, I got married, we did all of that fun stuff. I was still sticking to my diet, which again I will get to all of that after we get through this. And I had another fibroscan at the end of December of 2023. So this was just a few months ago. I was terrified. I'd been avoiding the fibroscan because I was so scared that it had progressed, even though I felt fine. There were times like I felt like a throbbing over there, but I don't know if that was just residual or in my head. It could have been either. So I had another fibroscan done. I found out on January 2nd of 2024 that it was completely reversed. There's nothing wrong with my liver anymore. I fixed it, so I'm incredibly relieved. I have the paper in front of me to prove that it's fine. So my score for both of those is now at a 0. There's no scarring, there's no fat built up anymore. My GI doctor was like, I don't know if you reversed it, if it was just from diet changes, or if it was just an anomaly of it being there. It was not an anomaly because I was in pain quite a bit. During this process, I had switched from one GI doctor to another because my original GI doctor moved states. So I have a new one. He wasn't quite as familiar with what was going on and all that fun stuff. So he was just throwing out any possible like scenario that could be related to this. And during that time, I had had several blood tests to confirm that my liver enzymes were spiking, so there was definitely something going on with my liver. It wouldn't have shown up on multiple scans over the span of like 6 months or so if there was nothing wrong. So I do want to read at the bottom of the page that they gave me of the printout of my score, just some stuff about NAFLD and the scan in general. Certain conditions can cause a liver stiffness result that's too high, which makes it incorrect. You may have less scarring than your results suggest. This can happen if you have liver inflammation, which is swelling. This can be caused by a recent liver illness. It can also be caused by long-term heavy alcohol use, so none of that. So it can also be caused by benign masses just sitting in your liver, just hanging out. There's also such a thing as liver congestion, which means that your liver is too full of blood or other fluids, things of that nature. FibroScan may also give less accurate results if you are too obese, things of that fun stuff. These are all words they're going to throw around at you if you do get diagnosed with it. When I did get diagnosed, I was absolutely terrified. I thought, my time is numbered because there's not a lot known about it. It's actually a pretty common issue, especially now in America. It's growing, which I have to believe is due to our foods and the way that we process food and things like that, because we know in the United States it's not the greatest in terms of keeping things healthy and keeping processed foods out of our hands. But that's also when I did some more research and I found out that your liver can regenerate itself. So I was hopeful after I read all that and I did my own research. Now, I did go to my GP. I went to my original GI doctor and I asked him, what foods can I eat? What should I avoid? And they just tell you like just avoid fatty foods. And it's like, but you're not giving me a list. When you're pregnant, say, they give you a list of things to avoid. When you have fatty liver, they don't give you a list. You have to figure that out kind of on your own. So I really wanted to make a list for YouTube for everything that I did that helped me reverse my fatty liver, because if it can help someone, then that will make me feel a lot better about what I went through, because during that time, I cannot tell you how alone I felt, because, everyone else is eating normally and I'm having to really restrict myself in terms of food and things of that nature. And it's very isolating because no one else quite understands what you are dealing with or going through, and the fear and the medical anxiety about getting scans and getting blood tests. And it was just a constant string of endless doctor visits, which again, if you've been on my channel for a while, you've seen the community posts how stressful it's been, and I've taken so many breaks and it's really hurt my channel and things like that because I had to focus on getting myself better. So let's start with my number one thing: no sugar. Sugar is really, really, really bad for NAFLD. Sugar is essentially like a poison for it. So definitely stay away from sugar as much as you can. That doesn't mean to cut it out completely. I still had a cookie here and there. I love baking. Baking's one of my absolute favorite hobbies. So of course I was still baking around Christmas time and things of that nature. And I would still have a few. Just maybe don't, eat 20 of them in a sitting type of thing. Another thing is maybe use monk fruit sugar instead of actual sugar. So monk fruit is actually a plant, and the sugar that comes from it is way better on your body than actual cane white sugar and all that fun stuff. So I actually quite liked it. The taste is not terrible. I actually wound up using it in some baked goods and they turned out pretty okay. So they make a brown sugar, they make white sugar, they make all that fun stuff. You can find it at Target. I found it at Walmart. You can find it pretty much everywhere now. It's pretty widespread, but it does go out of stock pretty often because it is pretty darn good for you. I also wound up getting quite a bit of it at Whole Foods. So number 2 that I stuck by was nothing white. So that means white flour, white bread, white rice, white pasta, things like that. So I stuck with brown rice. I stuck with whole wheat pasta, whole wheat bread, things like that. So when you have white bread and things like that, it adds to your glycemic index, which spikes your liver. So it does directly correlate to your liver health, which is unfortunate because I'm gonna be completely honest. Whole wheat pasta kind of slightly tastes like potting soil or what I would imagine potting soil to taste like. So you better dump the pasta sauce on there for your own benefit. Or my favorite thing that I was doing was I would make zucchini noodles instead. I already love zucchini in general, so that wasn't a big deal for me. And using a spiralizer and just pouring your pasta sauce on that. That was a huge help for me, I'm not gonna lie. But again, the good thing is I love zucchini, so that wasn't a huge deal for me, in all honesty. Another thing would be to buy Dave's Killer Bread, I believe it's called. It's pretty darn good for you, but it does go bad very quickly. So say you're not going to use it all, pop it in the freezer and then take it out when you want to use it. But it's actually pretty good for you, and that way you can still have bread if you like bread. I'm Italian and Arabic, so I really like bread. Number 3 is I avoided milk and dairy products for the most part. So they have a lot of fat content in them, especially if you're using whole milk and things like that. That's why they're good to bake with, because of the fat content, but it's not that great for your liver. I stuck with coconut milk, almond milk. I would also, for cheese, I would use mozzarella and feta a lot. So feta is okay for the liver. Mozzarella is like one of the least invasive cheeses, I guess, on your liver. I don't know how else to put it. Cheddar, there has been some back and forth on that one. If you're ever unsure, Google what you're wanting to eat and put like NAFLD or fatty liver after it and see what comes up. That was how I was learning, and I Googled absolutely everything before I put it into my body during this time because I didn't want to chance it adding to my liver disease. I didn't want to make it worse. Number 4 is I was also drinking a smoothie pretty much daily, especially during the summer months. My mom and I had gotten the BlendJet, the little personal blenders that you can just put your stuff into, which, by the way, they do not like chopping up a lot of things at once, so you have to do it in like little increments, unless that's just mine and it hates me. That's entirely possible. So I would put in whatever fruit we had on hand. Usually I had like frozen strawberries and bananas. I would sometimes put the monk fruit sugar in there if it wasn't too sweet or like the strawberries were too tart type of situation. I would also put in a handful of spinach. And I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, that's disgusting. You can't taste it. I promise you cannot really taste it, especially if you're loading it up with other fruits. I would also put some cocoa powder in there because cocoa powder in general is not bad for you. It's once you start adding the sugar and the milk and all that fun stuff that chocolate becomes a problem. So, you know, I would cover the taste of the spinach up. The bright side is I also like spinach, so I was cooking spinach quite a bit. Spinach is incredibly good for you. Greens are very good for your liver. They completely detoxify it and all of that fun stuff, and it's great for you. The one thing I will say, be careful with spinach because I know it can cause, I think, kidney stones if you eat too much of it. So if you're eating like a bag of spinach a day for a year or something crazy like that, you're probably gonna want to not do that. So number 5 that I was doing also, it kind of goes hand in hand with the smoothie thing, drinking coconut milk. Coconut milk is very good for your liver, and it tastes pretty darn good too, so I wasn't too upset about it. But it can help reduce the fat content in your liver, so that was a no-brainer for me. I was drinking, I think, a little cup of it daily when I woke up, just to help cleanse the liver a little bit more. Number 6 that I did was I was also drinking bone broth. So bone broth is also incredibly good for you. Just in general, it's good for you. It nourishes your body, it helps your hair, your skin, it helps all of your internal organs. It's fantastic for you. So it's a no-brainer that it's really good for your liver as well. So I was also drinking, I wouldn't say I was drinking a cup of that a day. I would say a cup every few days, because for me it was hard to get past the taste because they, you know, warm it up a little bit. Don't just drink it cold from the fridge. It's a little bit weird. But it was very hard for me to get it down, unlike the coconut milk, which I could just chug all day. So number 7 that I did, which was actually one of the very first things I did, and my family was disgusted, I was drinking apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar is good for your body, again, in general, but it's also quite good for the liver. It's a good thing. I really like vinegar. I'm one of those freaks. I can just drink it out of the bottle. It does burn my throat, but I love the taste. However, I will recommend getting a cup, filling it up with cold water, and then putting like a tablespoon of the apple cider vinegar in there. I think once a day is enough. I was doing it 2 to 3 times a day because I was, again, absolutely terrified. I had no other information about my liver, so I was doing anything I could kind of obsessively trying to fix the problem. So number 8 is I avoided fatty meats. That means red meat, that means pork, things like that. I stuck with turkey and chicken, and if you like fish, most fish is okay. I don't particularly like fish, so I didn't even touch that, but turkey and chicken were the only things I stuck with. I adapted a lot of recipes to turkey and chicken. To this day, I will now only eat like a chicken or a turkey burger. I don't even like normal hamburgers that much anymore. They kind of make me feel sick. So in hindsight, it was a good thing because it really cleaned up my diet, and now like things that I used to love, I have no taste for whatsoever anymore. It's kind of crazy how quickly your taste buds can change and what your body will and will not tolerate. Number 9 that I did was lots and lots of veggies, which we kind of already touched on, but veggies are incredibly important. I did kind of stay away from potatoes. Potatoes are not inherently bad for you, but they're not inherently good for the liver either. So I stuck with mostly like green veggies. Again, I had a lot of zucchini, a lot of spinach, bell peppers, carrots, things like that, because the more veggies, the better. Veggies are incredibly good for you. And I'm not just saying that to, you know, prove a point to your mother when you were like a child and she was trying to get you to eat your broccoli, but it is incredibly good for your body, especially if you have NAFLD. So if you don't like veggies, you might have to suck it up a little bit or put some seasoning on it, and seasoning is fine. Just be careful of sugar content and seasoning. So if you're using like the brown sugar bourbon seasoning that a lot of people use, which we've used it too, it's good. I would maybe avoid that guy for a little bit until you get a better handle of it, or just use it in moderation. Not an excessive amount of salt. You can have salt. Okay. I was under the impression that I couldn't have any salt whatsoever. No, you can have salt. Just don't dump an entire thing of salt on your eggs or whatnot, you know, if you like really like salt. I don't know who would actually do that, because that sounds disgusting. So I'm not gonna lie, I kind of lost count of what number we're on, so just bear with me. I also had no soda whatsoever. No soda, no fruit juices, things of that nature, because you have no idea how much added sugar is in those things. Don't eat them. Don't eat like the processed Hostess snack cake things, you know. Don't touch those. Those are full of processed garbage. It's full of sugar and all of that stuff. All of those processed foods and ingredients your liver has to process. So if your liver already has fatty liver, don't add to it. You can have, you know, a Twinkie every once in a while, like every 2 weeks if you want one, but don't sit there and eat the whole box in a night type of situation. But soda was a big no-no. I don't drink a lot of soda anyway. I'm not a huge fan. It gives me migraines. I have a chronic migraine issue, so sugar is a huge trigger for that. So cutting out sugar was not a bad thing. Cutting out soda for me was not a terrible thing. The only thing it kind of was detrimental for was when I was baking, but you know, when you're baking, you know what ingredients are going into it, so I felt way less guilty about eating those things. And the last and pretty much main thing I did, which kind of essentially sums up all this, is I followed the Mediterranean diet, because the Mediterranean diet is all about whole, good foods. So it's nothing fried, it's nothing, you know, overly saturated with sugars and too much oil and stuff like that. So the Mediterranean diet was a great thing for me to follow. Obviously follow it in moderation, because Italian food is classified as Mediterranean, so that includes a lot of pasta and cheeses. So I did avoid Italian food for a while. Aside from special occasions, I would obviously still eat Italian food because I'm Italian and I cannot stay away from it. But I'm lucky in terms of where we live in Vegas that we have a lot of Mediterranean restaurants out here. So it made going out to eat a little bit easier. We just had to be a little bit more picky and choosy about which restaurants we went to. I did still eat Mexican food, because for the most part, Mexican food is okay. There's a lot of veggies, especially if you get like fajitas and stuff like that. So I stayed away from the fried tacos. I stayed away from taquitos and stuff like that. And I stuck with more fajitas, or if I knew a restaurant had a more fresh kind of a taco, I would go for that instead. I'm also lucky in the effect that I am Mediterranean because I'm Lebanese, so I grew up with those foods for the most part. So adapting my diet to that was not that big of a deal for me because I already love it. So I had, you know, a lot of tabbouleh during this time. I did have lubi at times, just we cut out the meat from it because typically, at least in my family, we put steak in the lubi, but we cut it out during that time. We would substitute everything with chicken or turkey. I had a lot of kusa, which is one of my absolute favorite things to eat. It's basically a stuffed zucchini. And it's one of my absolute favorite things. So adapting your diet to Mediterranean isn't a death sentence. It's actually really, really good, and it's good for you. Scott wound up having to obviously kind of adapt to my diet as well when we would go out to eat and things of that nature, and he started to notice how much better his body was feeling the more we ate Mediterranean and Middle Eastern type food. So it's definitely a positive thing. The other thing I will mention is exercise, because again, NAFLD can be caused by gaining too much weight. And obviously fat in the liver is because of fat in the body. So Scott wound up getting me a walking pad, which is basically just a fold-up treadmill. It's sitting under the bed right now. We got a new bed and it's hard for me to get it out of there. But I was using this pretty much on a daily basis for about 3 to 4 months. I need to get back to it just to ensure, you know, we can continue to prevent the fatty liver from coming back. But exercise is important. Even if you just go out and walk around the block, get more activity than you're used to getting, because it is very helpful for not only obviously your metabolism and your heart, but it's very good for your liver function. So as I said earlier, I do have a list of websites that I have used in terms of recipes that I will compile into a nice like little Twitter link post thing that I will be able to post here on YouTube for you guys to check out if you do have any issues with fatty liver and things of that nature. Because again, I know how absolutely frustrating it is to get diagnosed with this and then no one gives you information. No one tells you which recipes to try. No one tells you which foods to eat or avoid. And it's incredibly frustrating. They just tell you a blanket statement like, no sugar and avoid fat. And it's like, but what does that consist of? You know? So my final tip, which I've already said, is to Google everything. Say you're about to pick out a sandwich that has cheddar cheese on it. Type in cheddar cheese and fatty liver into Google and see what comes up, and then make your decision based on that. This isn't about being perfect with the diet. This isn't about, you know, 100% accuracy, anything like that. This is about modification and doing the best that you can with what you have. So say your family goes out to a restaurant and it's an Italian restaurant. Pick the least offensive thing that would be okay for the liver. So maybe instead of getting, you know, a 5-pound lasagna that's loaded with cheese and meat, maybe get just a bowl of spaghetti instead. It's all about making modifications when you have to, and then eating cleaner when you can. Initially, I had put so much stress on myself to be absolutely perfect with every single thing that I ate that it was stressing me out beyond belief. I was crying all the time because I felt like I couldn't live my life anymore. I almost felt like a passenger in my own body, like it didn't belong to me anymore, because I didn't know what was happening to me, because I didn't really get it explained to me until I did the research myself. And honestly, that is the main reason I'm making this video, because I don't want anyone to feel as alone as I did during this process. And it wasn't because I was alone, you know, I had the support of my husband, I had the support of my parents and my friends, but when you're the only one that's actively going through it, it's kind of isolating and it's frustrating. So I hope that this video helps at least someone to understand fatty liver if you've just gotten the diagnosis, if you've been diagnosed a while ago and you're still not sure what you're doing, or if you're just frustrated by it. I really hope that this helps you. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to leave them in the comments down below. I will try to answer everyone, because I know how annoying this can be and how absolutely disheartening it can be. So I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helped. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a magical day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!